Welcome back to another episode of Hot Air with me, Joshua Robert. And today we are getting back into the health and wellness and nutrition side of things. I am joined by Aram, who is a nutrition and fitness coach and expert. So knowledgeable. And honestly, we're just kind of chit-chatting. We're having a conversation about all of these things that are now flooding my Instagram feeds, well, all my social media accounts with dopamine and serotonin and cortisol. And I'm like, how much truth is there to this? Like drinking your coffee 30 minutes after you wake up. Don't drink it before that. Your cortisol is going to spike and you're going to get stressed out. Is that true? And it's really not. But we're going to get into so much more of that. How the body responds to alcohol, to sugar, things that you and I can do just to stay on track, to keep our stress levels at a minimum, and how dumbbells are not always the best form of therapy. And before we get into it, wherever you are listening, make sure you are subscribed, rate the episode, leave a comment, share it with your friends, your family, and your foes. All right, let's hit it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is a first for Hot Air. We have our first male guest. It's been women on women on women. So we're bringing the testosterone to the mix today. I would like to introduce...
Or the low testosterone.
Or the low testosterone. I was going to say I actually had my testosterone tested. Mine is like peak levels, which I was like, how could that possibly be? But okay. You know, low testosterone, high testosterone, whatever. Some testosterone. So everyone, round of applause for Aram.
I appreciate
And everybody's clapping virtually while they're driving, hopefully with one hand on the steering wheel. But thank you so much for being here. I'm very excited to get into the mix of all of this. A lot of my stuff is very like therapy heavy, dating heavy, but Hot Air is also about, you know, nutrition and fitness and encompassing everything that is just living a healthy life. So Stefania, on a previous episode, if anybody listened to that, we talked about flexing your confidence muscles by taking care of yourself physically and working out in the gym. And she introduced us, and we're going to kind of hit on a different side of it. We're going to get into the food, the drink of it, how it affects us mentally and emotionally, things that truthfully I know nothing about. And I tried my best to not research any of it because I want to come into this clueless. I know like little itty bitty things, little things I've seen on the gram, but I want to, learn as much as I can, but we're going to keep it really simple which might be kind of boring for you. Because it's easy peasy. Like talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old learning about all of these things. But before we do that, why don't you tell me and everyone else a little bit about you?
Well, Josh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I'm always very grateful when I get to speak to an audience that's not my own. And I think a lot of people kind of brush over the idea of like having the privilege of being on a podcast. It's just wildly, I can't express gratitude to you enough, man. Like I'm very, very thankful for it.
Anytime. I'm glad that you're just willing to be here.
So my background is interesting. I was born in Russia. I came here in 1989, lived kind of like the typical immigrant lifestyle, like parents working 3 jobs apiece, living in New Haven, Connecticut at the time. Moved up to like white bread city and like the suburbs and went to college, was the first person in my family to do that, landed in finance. That was a bad place for me. Like Wolf of Wall Street shit. Like, you know,
okay.
Miami every weekend.
Not like a very positive environment.
No. Like
not
spending every penny,
yeah.
I had on drugs and strippers and booze
which can be fun for a hot minute, but maybe not a lifestyle.
It was. I mean, like it's awesome at 25, but at like 31, you're like, okay, I'm having mental health issues because of it now. And I left that world and bounced around. Like just, I was working. I had jobs. Like, you know, like when you haven't really found a purpose in life, you have jobs. And then when you find a purpose, you find a career. I didn't find my career it showed up at my doorstep, and it was the last possible piece of the puzzle. Like I was always the guy at work who people asked about what I should be eating for lunch today, or what are you doing at the gym? Can I join you? And that was always a passion of mine because I enjoyed taking care of myself, and it just came naturally to me. And it was fun sharing that information with people because it was always basic to me, And I always thought that people just overcomplicated it. And that's where we're at now, especially on the gram, like you said. And then I just went into it professionally. I got a job at Equinox in right outside of New York City in Greenwich, Connecticut. I was working with like the Greenwich Wife Elite. Um, I was just husbands were Wolf of Wall Street guys, and wives were home all day, and they wanted the trainer and the yoga instructor,
Yeah.
and the 3 hour brunch in the middle of the day, and that was my initial entry into fitness, which was not the real world whatsoever. That wasn't the
Right.
woman. That wasn't the woman who was struggling to peel 40 pounds off of her unhealthy body. That was the 110-pound woman with the fake tits who wanted to be 104 pounds. And it just wasn't an environment that I was in agreement with.
Right.
Because that's not healthcare to me. That's a body image problem. That's a relationship with food problem. That's a psychology issue that needs to be dealt with and just hasn't. So I got out of that side of the business, learned everything I could about nutrition, behavioral psychology, and started nutrition coaching people remotely, and moved to California in 21, went fully remote, and 600 clients later, I host an event to educate coaches once a year. It's called the Real Coaches Summit. I'm very heavy on education. I'm very heavy on empowering people with education. And I'm just tired of watching people get misinformed.
Hmm. So your main focus is nutrition,
I would say it's a
or
mixture between fitness, nutrition, mindset work, because it all one feeds the next. Like you can't comply to a nutritional protocol or to a fitness program if your head's not screwed on straight. If you're dealing with debilitating eating disorders, or if you have a horrible relationship with food, if your body image is just completely awful and unreasonable, I don't care how good of a coach I am or how good the plan is, you're not going to be able to follow it, because you're going to be so emotionally reactive and so down on yourself and hard on yourself that you're going to make it much worse for yourself than you need it to be. So I have to tease out and help people with those problems first before we start getting into macros and calories and sets and reps. Like it's all being done simultaneously.
right?
But the emphasis is like, let's get your mental health, your time management figured out first, and then we can really get good at the other technical stuff.
Right. And when you were the person in the office that people were coming to for nutrition or workout advice, where were you getting your information? Because that was before you were in the industry. So how did you educate yourself?
The old school way. Forums online,
Books? Okay.
books. I was lucky enough to just always have kind of like a white belt curious brain.
Mhm.
And I never took like I don't know for an answer. So like if somebody didn't know something that I asked them a question about, I would, or if I knew that somebody did know the answer to a question, I would ask them where they learned it from.
Right.
So if they're like, "Hey, this book was amazing," or "This person is amazing," look them up. I would just go down that, like the same way you go down the Spotify rabbit hole. I would go down the
Yeah.
educational rabbit hole. Like I would find the
Yeah.
author or the professor of the person who wrote the book, and I would just nerd out. And then obviously formal education came after that. And now it's just anybody can access anything at any moment. And there's just almost too much information now.
Mhm. I would agree. I go down a lot of rabbit holes. Usually, it's not fitness or nutrition related. I'll be like I'll be on a boat and there'll be those flying fish, and I'll be like, "How did those fish fly?" So then I'll Google it, and but now well, I used to know, I kind of forgot it. Or like, how does a photocopier work? Like that always intrigued me, so I'll figure it out. Maybe I could do that a little bit more with my nutrition, but I do it a lot with my workouts, and there is so much information. And I think, which I've said with Stefania and other guests, just keeping it a little bit simpler generally seems to be the way to start and the way to keep yourself from getting confused and at least finding something that you can kind of commit to. So, today, we're going to talk about. I'm thinking those three main things that I keep seeing on Instagram, and my algorithm now that I've started this podcast is very different. And so I'm seeing like every day, I'm like cortisol this and serotonin this and dopamine this. And like I know the very minimum, right? And a lot of it, some of it has to do with dating. When someone texts you, you get that dopamine drip or whatever. And I'm like, sweet, that makes sense. That's why I'm a psychopath. And then I calm myself down once I guess my dopamine drip goes back to where it should be. But then when it comes to foods, and I've been seeing some things about coffee specifically, how you're not supposed to drink it within 30 to 60 minutes of waking up and it spikes your cortisol and things like that. I'm like, how does that even work? I don't even drink my coffee until about 40 minutes after anyway, so that's great if that is indeed a fact. But why don't we just start with that, the coffee thing? I saw a post the other day. Coffee, drinking it right away ain't good for you, spikes your cortisol. What the hell is cortisol?
So cortisol is a stress hormone. It's naturally produced for protective purposes. What it does is once cortisol is released into the bloodstream due to a stressful situation, whether it be emotional stress, physical stress, whatever, any type of perceived stressor by the body, it's our fight or flight response. What it does is it starts to pull nutrients out of cells, so like glucose, free fatty acids, and it spills them into your bloodstream. And it essentially makes you ready to either fight or flee because our
Okay.
body and brain is operating off of very archaic operating systems. Like it still thinks that we're being chased by animals and we have to hunt for our own food. It doesn't realize that we have cars, refrigerators,
Right.
Instagram. It doesn't know any of that. Like it still thinks that we're like cavemen. But unfortunately, like our software hasn't upgraded to our current environment. So we have readily available food. We don't have to hunt for it anymore. We're not being chased and being physically threatened anymore. But our body doesn't know the difference between a physical threat and a psychological threat. So you having a fight with your boyfriend or me having a shitty day at work, same cortisol response as if you and I were in a street in a knife fight,
Okay.
unfortunately. So
Okay.
cortisol just being released because of circumstances happening in your life is totally normal and is not going to destroy anything. So what it gets blamed for is because it has a correlation to insulin. And insulin often gets blamed for being a storage hormone, which then promotes fat gain. So these are all natural physiological processes that are supposed to be occurring. But the problem is if they're occurring consistently and chronically, well, now you have all this nutrient density inside your blood that has to go somewhere.
Right.
So, unfortunately, most people are seated and sedentary, but they're releasing all of these nutrients constantly, which then should be getting expended, but they don't. And then they just go back into storage. That's totally fine. So, like the idea that you can't have coffee because it's a stressor is completely untrue.
Okay. Good to know.
It doesn't. It might spike cortisol some immeasurable amount, but that's missing the forest for the trees. Like if somebody's thumbing through Instagram and they don't eat 4 meals a day, they don't know how many grams of protein they should be having. They don't even know what a calorie is. The last thing they need to be worried about is what cortisol spikes are occurring
When
throughout the
when
day.
they're gonna drink their coffee.
Right, like just drink your fucking coffee whenever you feel like it. And even
Right.
even like the idea that coffee dehydrates you is bullshit. Like think about it. It's water based. Like the
Right.
entire thing, 99% of coffee is water. So the fact that even
Right.
people say, well, like it might be a mild diuretic, but so is pineapple and asparagus. But like nobody's telling you not to eat asparagus and pineapple, but they're saying, well, don't drink
Right.
coffee. The only problem with coffee and caffeine in general is it does have an 8 to 12 hour half life. And it is an upper, it's a stimulant, it's a nervous system stimulant. So if you're somebody who doesn't sleep well, don't drink coffee after 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
That's it.
Okay. So one time you said about being chased by animals. One time, because I grew up in Canada, I was in the middle of nowhere on a bike and I stopped and I turned around and there was a bear across the
Shit.
road. And I froze because I don't flee, or I guess I don't flight or fight either. Fight, flight, whatever. I froze is the point. So that moment spiked my cortisol, right? Because I was shitting my pants and then I just froze. But coffee, 30 minutes after waking up, doesn't do that. That's a lie.
No.
Okay.
And
Where do you
not
think that
not
these
not
things
to
come from?
not to that degree. Where it comes from is
Right.
it comes from social media marketing, creating problems that then they only can fix.
Right.
Right? Like if I tell you all of these crazy problems that you never even thought you had, but then I also offer you solutions to those problems behind a paywall, you're going to pay me for my knowledge.
Right.
So, and because it sounds so outlandish and it sounds like outside of the basic realm of just your normal everyday life, people are always trying to hang on to that one thing that they're missing. Right? They don't realize that it's like it's your mental health, your physical health, your actions, your behaviors, all this stuff. They're always looking for the one workout that they're missing or the one nutritional piece of advice that they've never gotten that's going to unlock all of these proverbial results. And it's just not the case. It's compounded interest of action day after day, year after year. And that's how physiques are built. And that's how fat is lost. And that's how muscle is built. And that's how habits are built. But unfortunately, we live in that very dopamine heavy society that's always promised and believes in the quick fix. And the quick fix is just easier to sell. Like
Right.
if like hiring me for $298 a month to help you eat like an adult is not a sexy sell. But if I tell you that you're fucked up and your cortisol is out of balance and I have the
Yeah.
secret to fix your cortisol, which is also the reason why you're fat, well, it's like, oh my God, that he's like the guru that I've been missing. Like that, I'll pay him
Right.
$500 a month.
Right.
And that's why these fucking idiots exist on the internet.
Right. And maybe that's why I've been kind of paying attention to these things because they sound kind of like so out there to me, things that I don't really know a lot about. So then I go, oh, maybe like, do I drink my coffee like right away or do I drink it too soon? Or is this maybe why I'm stressed out? Looking for the answers when the answers are probably elsewhere.
But let me
So
ask
that
you a
actually
question.
makes a lot of sense.
Like
Ask me.
this is an important thing, right? Like you're a very smart and seemingly reasonable human being. Do
Sometimes,
you
yes.
like if you were to really sit there and analyze something as innocuous as what time you drink your coffee, like do you actually think that it actually makes some monumental difference?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking you if it does, because I really didn't know. I really was like, "Does it?" Like, I really didn't know. Because whenever I do hear something new, I mean, a lot of people get their education from Instagram and TikTok, right? So, I like to do a little bit of research. I did not in this case because you are my research. So I didn't look into it, but I'm like, "Well, it's great to start the day by chugging a glass of water," I imagine. So I chug a glass of water when I wake up. Like, so then I drink my coffee later. So in my mind, I was doing it right. So I wouldn't know if it spiked my cortisol because I'm not really stressed, but
So
I don't know.
I guess the first question would be then, right? Like anytime you have to tease out these people's problems or what their lack of knowledge or awareness is like my first question to you is, do you know what a calorie is? Right.
It's
So
just
like
energy, right?
that's what it's
Yeah.
energy. It's a unit of
Right.
measure of energy. It's actually the amount of energy you would need to bring 1 tablespoon of water to a boil or whatever. I think it's again like with as much biochemistry as I learned through my nutrition education, nobody gives a shit.
Right.
Like Mrs. Jones wants to know how to lose 40 pounds. Does she know? Does she need to know the intricacies of the Krebs cycle? No. Does
Don't
she
even know what
know?
that is.
Does she
So
know?
no.
It's just basically just a energy exchange model that
Okay.
talks about how like energy is converted from one form to another. We don't need to know the depths of biochemistry because none of that stuff is actually practical knowledge for you to then take and run with to create behavior change. That topic's going to
Hmm.
come up a lot for you to just do the shit that you know you have to do. Like most people today, I think understand the value of protein. They understand. I mean, anybody that still thinks fruit's bad for you is just fucking wild to me. I just don't understand that. Or like vegetables are bad for you. Like any person that you hear that says dumb shit like that, just immediately turn your ear off and just run in the other direction because that person is a charlatan of all charlatans. Like
Right.
anybody that tells you fruit is bad for you or fruit makes you fat or vegetables have chemicals in them that make you get fat or whatever else, they're just completely assholes. Like these are just people who are trying to separate themselves from the pack and be so sensational and outside of the realm that they seem like experts
Right.
because the basics are the only thing that work. There is no biohack to anything. Like, sure, if you have the money for like peptides and steroids and all this other shit, yeah, that stuff works. And there's a reason why most of it's illegal, right? Like,
Hmm.
I've been on performance enhancing drugs, they work, but they come at a price,
Right.
right? Like loss of libido, like acne, all sorts of crazy shit that you don't want to go through for what? For the 3 pounds of muscle you're going to gain that you're just so impatient to have to put on because you have to go to a pool party in 6 months. And that's really all it is. It's this undying human need to have to look a certain way to fit a societal mold that nobody actually gives a shit about or understands. And I work with mostly women who are constantly being berated by this idea that they have to be a certain size. When in reality,
And it's
like
always changing too,
always, oh, like
whatever that
yeah,
expectation is. It's never consistent for a very long time. So then all of a
no,
sudden you want a butt and then you don't, and then you want boobs and then you don't, and then this it's like it's you're never gonna fit in because by the time you do, we've moved on to something else.
nope,
And isn't that inspirational?
that pursuit of perfection is just such a useless waste of energy because you're never going to be
It's not a
perfect.
good time.
There's no such thing as perfect. There's no, and even the people that are walking around with these amazing physiques, I know most of them. Like I know bodybuilders, I know bikini competitors. They're some of the most miserable fucking people on the planet. They have more psychological trauma and issues than somebody who's 40 pounds overweight. And that's why they look the way they do because they're hiding behind that body because they won't work on this anymore. Because
Right.
that's too hard. Like you start unlocking the deep stuff in between your ears, it's a messy, muddy process. I mean, I'm sure you've done therapy. Like,
Mhm.
like
Little
that,
bit.
like that's a place where you start going down that road and you start seeing things about yourself that you don't want to see. Like a lot of people don't know how to handle that. So they go to there's nothing that pisses me off more than the gym is my therapy.
Mhm.
Like, no, you're
It used to
just
be my therapy, but I was also not the nicest and I was so irritable. And now that I'm in therapy, I actually can walk around, smiling and going to the gym. It is still my therapy. I love that time to think about things and just like mull over stuff and whatever I might bring to therapy next. But having an actual therapist that is not the dumbbells is very helpful
you
in
have to have
life.
both. Like
And
a
yeah,
it's like a healthcare team,
yeah,
right? Like you can't work on inner problems with sets and reps and macros. Like it's just never going to fix that problem. And Lord knows I've
totally.
tried. I've been 7% body fat, and I'll tell you, it's a horrible place to be. Like
No,
the
I'm hungry
visible,
just thinking about it.
yeah, like the visible abs
Yeah,
are cute for a second, but then nobody gives a shit. Like nobody
yeah.
actually, like I was running around so desperate for female affirmation and female attention that I didn't realize that the one thing I was missing was the one thing they wanted, which was a personality and a conversation.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah. I mean,
like
dad bods are in. As long as you're nice and a good person, like, dad bods are in. They're in for now. So once you get your dad
until
bod, six packs might be back. Who knows? Okay, this cortisol thing, let's wrap this up. Is
yeah.
there something, or is there a food or a drink or something that could spike your cortisol, that stress hormone? Is there something that people might be doing that they don't realize adds that level of stress that is just nutrition based? Or the opposite of that, is there something that can bring that down? Does that exist? Am I making
So
this up?
to worry about cortisol again is missing the forest for the trees, but
Right.
being in a chronic state of stress is bad indirectly for fat gain because it impacts your decision making. So, like
Right.
somebody who doesn't manage their stress from their family life or their relationships or their work is probably going to be prone to making shittier, more impulsive decisions or soothing their stress with food and drink. So, it's not that the cortisol is making you fat, it's that cortisol is changing brain
I
chemistry
see.
and changing emotional reactivity or stress response to then make you want to soothe that stress response.
Right.
So,
So it's more about the situation you're in. It's not, oh, the cortisol is making you stressed. You're in a situation that is making you stressed, and then your brain starts reacting, and then you go down that, which I talked about in my last episode. How when I get stressed, I binge eat. I go to the grocery store, I walk down every aisle, and I go, I'm gonna get whatever the fuck I want today. There's some ice cream, there's some chips, there's some candy, there's some this and that, and then sit in my bed watching something, and I will smoke some weed because everything tastes better when you're high,
yep.
and I will just eat sometimes all of it, sometimes just parts of it, but it just brings me so much joy. And I was talking about how that I mean, again, this is another thing that I saw on Instagram about your habits and how, you have your trigger, whatever triggers your habit, what you do after that, what your action is, and then how you feel after your reward. And then that increases your dopamine, which makes you feel good. But is this like the same situation? Is it really a measurable amount of a dopamine hit in that habit? Is this the same as cortisol when you're like having coffee in the morning? It might spike your cortisol, but it's so immeasurable that it's really not that significant of a thing to happen. It's not going to spike your make you super stressed out because you're having your coffee early. Is this the same with like your reward from a habit, your dopamine levels? Do they spike up?
They do. I mean, that's why we see, like, if you think about the basis of what a human being is, we're not really much different than animals. We run towards pleasure and we run away from pain. So
Right.
running towards pleasure is that perpetual seeking of the next best thing or that next hit. Like anybody that's ever done drugs, Are we allowed to talk about narcotics on here?
We're allowed to talk about
All
everything
right. So
unless I get canceled
have you ever done blow before?
twice.
Okay. So if you've ever
Yes.
done blow,
Didn't
anybody's
love it.
listening, some people don't love it, which is rare. Most people love it. And most people, once they
Yeah.
start, they don't stop because they keep chasing
uh,
that feeling that it gives you. That's dopamine in a nutshell. The person who does heroin the first time will never get as high as they did the first time, and they keep chasing the dragon. That's why it's called the magic dragon. So any food has a very similar chemical makeup. The way that now a piece of grilled chicken is not going to be the same thing as a bag of Doritos,
no,
right?
never.
Because there's a high level of calorie load and there's a high level of palatability, meaning it's very, very tasty. Now, it doesn't mean that a chicken breast isn't tasty, but it's nowhere near as tasty as a bag of Doritos or a sweet treat or something else that you enjoy. So the dopamine per food item is just so much higher, and it'll never compare to anything that's natural whole foods based. That's why people gain fat, because when they're using food as a coping mechanism and they're eating without any level of mindfulness, calories just keep adding up because the things that they're eating aren't actually filling them up, right? Like if I was to actually sit you down and give you a plate of salmon, white rice, and asparagus, you're not asking me for seconds.
Right.
But if you and I go to Five Guys, you'll probably eat the burger and the fries and the milkshake, and then 2 hours later, you're like, "Fuck, let's go again."
Right.
And that food is designed to be sexy and alluring. That's what it's for. Like these people that design this food do it to entertain you and to get you to buy more of it, not because they're trying to make you healthy. That's not what it's for.
Healthy. Yeah. No, it's all marketing,
Yeah.
which is where my brain goes. I always think about how the barbecue is like so marketed towards men because it makes them feel like burly and butch, and that's why dads are always barbecuing. And it's only because the barbecue is marketed towards men. If it had been marketed towards women, women would be barbecuing. Like it's very simple. And I guess that goes with almost everything we're talking about today.
Have you ever seen like female specific protein containers that are pink and very
No. Have I? No.
there's a lot of
I don't think,
I mean females are
but it's
definitely
probably the
more
same thing, right?
exact. It's the same exact product. It's just put in a container that's supposed to be marketed towards women. So now instead of a woman thinking that she's getting a man's protein, which is going to make her bulky or whatever else bullshit she believes, she's going to
Right.
buy the pink thing because it's been marketed towards her. The amount there, I mean, there's trillions of dollars in fitness and nutrition marketing towards mostly women.
Right.
And that's why there's such like a prevailing problem. Like there are male eating disorders and there are male problems like orthorexia and stuff like that, but nowhere near the amount that there is for women.
That's interesting. I have not seen a pink protein container yet, but
You'll
now
see it.
I
You'll
will
see
look
it
for
now.
it later. I will find I'll probably never not see it now that I know that it is a thing. Speaking of my sugar and my dopamine and all that good stuff, I this is terrible. I have a bag of Sour Patch Kids sitting right over there. And I often I didn't even have a stressful day yesterday. I was just like, I need a snack. I will just chow down on that thing. And candy has always been such a weakness for me. It is like, and I could eat candy every single day. And I try to just be like Josh, just on the weekends. There's some times during the week when I'll, have an extra little snack or whatever. There's also some chocolate caramels over there too, if I'm being 100% honest. But I was also briefly talking to Stefani about this. What happens to us, our body, our mind, when we put that type of sugar inside of us? Because for me, I will wake up and I will be so drowsy. I find that I'm like almost extra like phlegmy, like kind of gross, but like I feel like I have more sleep in my eyes and like in my throat and I am groggy. I know sugar is processed sugar like that is terrible for us and I assume very addicting. So what happens when we indulge in things like an entire bag of Sour Patch Kids to our mind? I guess we can start there.
So it's a similar response to anything that's hyper palatable. So when I use the word hyper palatable, just think very, very tasty.
Very tasty.
So it's not that the sugar itself that's the problem. It's the fact that the combination of sugar and flavor is evoking a psychological response that says, I just want more of this. Um, I'm not a big like study regurgitator, but they have done studies. And I hate the word they have because nobody fucking knows who they
Who is
are.
they?
Right.
Yeah.
Like I there's nothing that bothers me more than people who regurgitate studies they've never actually read from people they don't actually know. But that's what the fitness industry loves to do. That's why we see a lot of these like Huberman clips of these assholes being like, well, studies show. There have been studies done where they've given rats water and then rats given water with sugar flavoring in it. And 99% of the time they go for the sugar water.
Right.
Obviously. Why? Because it just tastes better. So there's not an actual chemical response to it outside of, again, that same dopamine hit. So anytime you hear dopamine, just think pleasure.
Right.
Like there's no, again, it's not an inherently bad chemical, just like cortisol is not a bad chemical or insulin's not a bad chemical. They're just chemicals. They just exist and they're in response to our actions. So the more you eat that type of stuff, the more you want it. Like it's very difficult for me to give somebody a Whole Foods menu and then they're just craving it and thinking about it. Nobody does. That's fuel. You eat it, you're
Yeah.
satisfied for 3 to 5 hours, and you're good. Like you don't really want anything. Cravings and hunger are two completely different things. Craving is a psychological response or need or want. Hunger is a physiological response. If you're hungry and I give you an apple, you'll be like, fuck yeah, let's go. If you're having a craving and I give you an apple, you're like, bitch, what? Like,
It's
no,
not gonna hit the spot. Don't
no,
even try it. Yeah.
no. Like it's not the Sour Patch Kids. It's not the chocolate because you don't need that stuff. You want that stuff.
Right.
So that's the difference between having foods that are alluring and that are very tasty versus foods that are filling, have a lot of micronutrient density and have a lot of actual nutritional value, because those things don't make you come back for seconds. They're just a part of your life because they're part of a balanced nutritional profile. But the way that I coach people, I'm like, hey, listen, go out to restaurants, have ice cream cones, eat an entire bag of chips every once in a while. That's fucking balance. That's what you're supposed to be doing. If that type of behavior makes up an abundance of your eating, well, you're fucked. It's not hard to understand how people gain fat. It's just people gain it so slowly over time, and then they want it to be lost in this very unreasonable amount of time because because again, it placates to that I'm very disgusted with my body image. But if you actually audited what led you to that fat gain and you took personal responsibility for the actions you took to get there, you'd be like, oh yeah, I get it. Like I was starting a family, I was starting a career, I had no fucking time for myself. All I did was pick shit off my kid's plate. I would order food out because I didn't want to cook it. And half my life was spent inside of a restaurant or a gas station snacking on shit. Yeah, I get why I got fat. Like nobody who's cooking 4 meals a day and not going out to eat and not snacking on processed foods are going to get fat. It's just impossible. Like your brain just doesn't seek that stuff. You know, there's a cutoff switch as opposed to like, no, this tastes really good. I'm going to hit the bottom of the bag with my hand.
Right. Okay, so let's say if you had a client, not to, I don't want to give away any of your secrets, but say your client was me
There's
and
no
he really
secrets.
loved Sour Patch Kids. And now it kind of makes more sense. It's kind of similar to the cortisol. We're not stressed out because of cortisol. We're in a stressful situation and I'm not quote unquote addicted to my Sour Patch Kids because of the sugar. I like it because it tastes good, basically. So it's a lot simpler. But like how can somebody, although I did do an episode about habits, this is really challenging for me to break. Is there a way that you would work with your client to maybe cut back on their intake of that sugary candy or replace it with something? What would you do?
So there's two ways. There's replacement, like you said, which I think is a great way to do it, but it's never quite as fulfilling, right? Like I've heard stuff where like, oh, if you're craving sweets, just have a pear. It's like, no, that's not going to
Right.
satisfy what I want. Like I want a fucking cupcake. That the apple's not going to cut it. So replacement means literally replacing the action with something that would be kind of equivalent, but nothing will really hit a sweet or salty craving the way that sweets or salt will. The better method is to have a portion control model towards it. So, like, let's say you bought that whole bag of Sour Patch Kids. The second you come home from the store, pull them out of the bag and put them into portion baggies
Okay.
and just throw them in your pantry and say, like, if I want them, I have to get off my ass and go get them. And
But I will.
I'm only gonna grab, but I'm only gonna grab one baggie at a
Yeah.
time. So
Okay. Separate them out.
it's immediately putting a delay from action or from thought to action. So the second you can delay that, like, I need it so I can just get it response, right? That impulsivity, you're going to probably think a little bit harder about it and you're going to think a little bit more clearly about it. And then there's abstinence, which is just don't keep it in your house. If you know you have a problem with a certain food, like for me, like If there's Stacy's pita chips or white cheddar popcorners around, I'll blow somebody to get them. I don't care, and I'll do it in front of my parents. I'll be like, "Mom, sorry, I love you, but
Not your
you're
parents.
gonna watch some weird shit because I want popcorners." I know that about myself, so I don't keep that shit in the house because I also smoke pot every
Right.
night, and if I smoke pot, I have no inhibitions when it comes to food. So I just know
Yes.
myself enough to know that I'm not going to keep that stuff in the house. If I want it, I'm going to either have to get off my couch, get in my car, drive to the store to go get it, or unfortunately, I can just order it on GoPuff because I'm a big fat fuck and I'm going to do that anyway. I also don't have a fat loss goal. I'm also not disappointed with how I look and feel. So I'm going to give myself a little bit more grace and some more flexibility because I'm not upset. If I got to a place where I was, I'd probably delete the apps off my phone because I know that I don't have like willpower is so finite and self-control runs out at some point that you can't rely on it, but you are a product of your environment. So if your environment is a pantry full of bullshit that you're susceptible to overeating, you're going to overeat it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Unfortunately, I have a 7-Eleven half a block away, so
Well,
when I do smoke
at
that
least you have to
weed, then
walk.
I that's true. I do enjoy walking though. I'm always down. I'm like, "Oh, get my steps in while I go get some fucking licorice or
But
something."
you also don't have a weight problem. You
I
know
do
what I mean?
not, you're right, and like you said, if I did, I would definitely cut back, and I do have that self-control. I did, like, a little bulk last year, and then during my cut, I was very strict about it. I had never done that before, so it was my first kind of introduction to doing a bulk and a cut, but I didn't have chips in the house. I didn't have candy. I didn't have any sugary stuff, and it worked. It did what I wanted it to do, so you're right. If I was overweight and did not like my body, I would probably make different choices, so I suppose it's where you're at
Yeah.
mentally and physically. One thing that I do, I posted a reel about it today. Alcohol, we all know is not the greatest, but it is a part of life for almost everyone, unless you are in AA. Hopefully, it is not. And sometimes I am like, should I go to some meetings? Because I would really love to just stop drinking, even though I don't think I'm an alcoholic. I just have one drink, two drink, whatever. It can be minimal, it can be a lot. I always have, that crash the next day where I'm really spiraling and overthinking. And I go into a place where I'm like, did I misbehave? Did I do something bad? Even though I was completely aware, which I did talk to my therapist about this the other day, but like, we all party in our 20s. So he's like, maybe you're just triggered from some things that happened when you were absolutely wasted and your behaviors then, which I've never thought about that before. But similar to what we just talked about with sugar, what happens when we overindulge in alcohol?
The worst part of alcohol is that it is a sleep disruptor, so it ruins the quality of the sleep that somebody gets. That's probably the worst part about it. Because alcohol, you know how people talk about like toxic food ingredients and aspartame and seed oils and all this other bullshit? Those aren't actual documented toxins, especially with the amounts that exist in our food supply. Like they aren't measurably damaging. First or 50th sip of alcohol is immediately damaging. So it converts into acetyl alcohol, which is not able to be stored in the body, and it actually can kill you if it builds up. So it has to get rid of it. So it'll disrupt sleep. It'll destroy recovery from training. It ruins the body's ability to create what's called muscle protein synthesis. So muscle protein, it's just the way that your body uses protein to build new cells. So it disrupts that process. So like it makes muscle growth and repair harder. And there's also a massive downer psychological effect because it is a nervous system depressant. That's why people feel that level of lethargy or depression or anxiety the next day. It's because they're essentially coming down off of that alcohol. And there's only two substances that we can actually die from not having, which is heroin and alcohol. That's why during COVID, liquor stores did not close
Right.
because the hospitals would have been fucking flooded with people going through alcohol withdrawal and they would have died. They wouldn't have been able to
Wow.
handle half of it. I mean, my father's a 78-year-old alcoholic. Like he doesn't drink to the point where he's like beating my mother or yelling at me, but he's a functioning alcoholic. Like he has to drink every single day. Now, the clients who I have who are drinking 3 to 4 times a week are not getting results.
Right.
Pure. Why? Because it also inhibits your ability to make good decisions. So, how much tastier is Taco Bell when you're hammered? Or how much easier it is to open up that food delivery app when you're hammered? Because you're getting that same level of cognitive decline, which makes you a little bit more loosey goosey. So again, it's indirectly contributing to fat gain because you're just eating more because of it. And then there's also like the soothing the next day on the couch because you're hungover and you feel like shit.
Right.
I take the approach if you want to drink and celebrate life, binge drink once or twice a month. Like get it out of your fucking system. Like honestly, like for me, I might have a cocktail at dinner here and there, but I like cocktails. Like I like craft, fruity,
Mhm.
$25 Lumi cocktails that are pretty to look at. Like I'm not going to
Yeah.
go and slam vodka soda like I used to because I wanted
Uh-huh.
to get drunk back then. That was the purpose. Now I'm like I'm actually enjoying life and I don't want to
Correct.
feel like shit. And I prefer recreational drugs over booze because they make me feel better and they're not as damaging in the long term. Like obviously you do enough recreational drugs, they could be damaging as well. But I think if you can manage, like anything else, if you can manage your consumption of sweets or you manage your consumption of alcohol, and if it's not impacting your day to day quality of life, then you don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, if somebody's trying to get fit or gain muscle and you're getting drunk 2, 3 times a week, the likelihood of you going to the gym the next day or sticking with your nutrition game is very slim, so you're not really progressing. But I'm always curious about if you want to, or if you can, touch a little bit more on how it affects your protein synthesis, when like, for somebody like me who's constantly trying to gain muscle, and I don't drink a lot, but there are weekends when I will go out and have some extra drinks. How much does somebody have to drink for it to actually affect their gains, let's say, in the gym?
It really
Is it the
depends on
1
the,
drink, 50 drink situation? Same thing?
I mean, technically speaking, anything is going to start to have, like, even the first sip is already going to have some effect. But it really depends on the person's body size, the amount of muscle they have, how good their nutrition is, how good their recovery is, how good their sleep is, how hydrated they are, how much they move. Because a person that can process out alcohol faster than somebody else isn't going to have the same problems. And a lot of that has to do with genetics. Like I'm genetically, I'm lucky because I come from an Armenian Russian family and we're all alcoholics. So, I mean, I can go out like you and I. If we went out tonight, I can easily put down 10 drinks, and I'm not in a
No.
position. I
I
could
would
probably
definitely die.
I could probably still drive. Not a good idea, but I probably could.
Not well, but
Now, I mean, I spent my 20s drinking Wednesday to Sunday and doing an 8 ball of blow 3 nights a week, and I had no problem putting on muscle because the ability to eat and recover in my 20s was just higher. Now in my 40s, if I was to drink like that, I couldn't. There's just no way. I would be drunk for 4 days straight and I wouldn't be able to recover for another 3 or 5 days after that. So there's just been, again, there'd be no gym time, period. But like if you're able to still go and get stimulus to the muscle, right? You're still going to the gym. If you're still able to consume enough protein, technically you're not going to really have a problem. It's no different than people that are on Ozempic who are supposed to be losing muscle mass, as long as they're training to some degree of intensity and eating protein enough to the point where they're getting enough protein, they're not going to have any problems. Is it not an optimal idea?
what is side note, what is your opinion on Ozempic?
Right tool for the right job, like for the right person. Like if you're 140 pounds and you want to be ripped by summer, then you're taking it for the wrong reasons. If you're a 275-pound woman with type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease that's going to kill you in 5 years, then absolutely fucking get on it.
Right. So all
Um,
the women in LA that I know that are on Ozempic are not doing it for the right reason.
same thing that
Well, we
where I'm
knew that,
from.
but
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
again, quick fix. Like just because it exists doesn't mean you should take it. But then, like,
Right.
who am I to judge? Like, I've taken trenbolone, which is one of the nastiest steroids you could possibly take. But like, I'm also doing it with an informed amount of information, and I'm
Mhm.
not looking for a quick fix. I dose it at the lowest level possible. I take liver support. I'm on all sorts of different supplements to counteract the negative side effects. I do blood work before and after. Like I'm doing everything I possibly can to mitigate risk. Whereas,
Mhm.
like, Tina from Los Angeles is going to jump on it to lose weight for the next gala, ignoring the fact that she still has to eat enough protein, but now she doesn't have the appetite to eat a fucking thing. She's probably not strength training. So now she's losing muscle on top of that. So what ends up being fat loss ends up being skinny fat and a pancake ass and kind of defeats the purpose.
Poor Tina with her
Yeah.
pancake ass. No, that's the I know some people that they look good, but they're on it, on Ozempic, and I say to them, I'm like, "You have to do some strength training," and they're like, "Well, I go to yoga several times a week." I'm like, "No, you have to pick up some heavy weights, move some heavy shit around." Like, you do they don't look bad. There are some that don't look great, but you have to have some muscle tone. Otherwise, your arm is just like a noodle. It's just this one weird half-cooked al dente noodle, I guess. I
Not
think
even
al
al
dente is
dente.
half-cooked, not even al dente. So it's interesting. A lot of the stuff we talked about today, I feel like almost like debunked in a way.
Yeah.
Like the things that I've been seeing from social media, cortisol. You're stressed out because you're cortisol. No, you're stressed out because you're stressed out in a
Right.
stressful situation. And then the cortisol does its thing. This thing with the sugar, the dopamine hits, the all of this stuff is all, you're right. It's just marketing to get these people to follow you on Instagram so that they, and it is a very quick fix. It's like, oh, if I don't drink my coffee right away, then I'm not going to be stressed out. And maybe it works psychologically. Maybe people think it is, but it's really not doing anything physically, which is, I feel like we debunked the entire world, the entire
That's
Instagram world.
I'm like an anti-influencer, and I actually it bothers me that I have to be in a space that's so influential because like I have 46,000 followers. Like if I say something, people listen. But I
Yeah.
also have enough integrity to not say dumb shit. And I
Right.
don't need to oversell anything because I have a beautiful book of business because people trust me and I take care of each and every person. And it's not about how much money I can make, it's about how many lives I can impact. And the money comes eventually with it anyway. But you know, I went to the Arnold a couple of months ago, and the amount of supplements being sold and the amount of 22-year-old kids with back knee walking around in there that are already taking 5 grams of test a week and waiting for 4 hours to get some fucking YouTuber's autograph. That's where the fitness industry is headed. And
Yeah.
it's clout chasing. It's how much more of affiliate codes can I sell so people can buy more young law bullshit. And it's lost every ounce of educational integrity or honesty because it's so easy to make money and there's no vetting process. Anybody can get into the fitness industry tomorrow. And after their initial certification, they're not required to do anything else.
Right.
No different than a doctor, kind of, if you think about it. Like doctors, once they get their MD, they don't really need to get any continuing education. They should. But like, I pride myself in being able to be slightly ahead of the game and knowing that I can debunk garbage like this. And unfortunately, the most people won't listen because most people are seeing what you're seeing. I don't see any of this stuff. Like the way that my algorithm is curated because of the stuff that I look at, like my explore page is dogs and food. I look at dogs and I look at food porn. That's all I look at. Like I don't see like a lot of my friends who are in the fitness industry have like large accounts, like 400,000 or 500,000. They spend a lot of time doing like the stitch content. And I think there's merit to that, especially like if you're a nutrition PhD and you're making a stitch video against cortisol. Well, yeah, you're going to empower people to make better choices. But there's also a lot of stitch content now that it's basically just like taking shit content off of TikTok and then just putting your own spin on it just to prop yourself on top of somebody else's shoulders. And that just to me, you lose authenticity, you've lost originality, and it's just not the way I want to do stuff, man.
Yeah. So somebody like me who has this algorithm that is throwing all of this stuff that seems like quick fixes and fads and which we're now we know are not really facts, where would you suggest they divert their attention to, or where do people like me go, the people that don't have a podcast and someone like you to talk to other than listening to this episode, where can they learn more helpful tips along the lines of what we've been talking about?
The easiest way to at least stay away from bad information, because finding good information is almost harder than staying away from bad information.
True.
It's easier to stay away from bad information because the more ridiculous it sounds, or the more out of left field it sounds, the more ridiculous it probably is. So if it's like, if you see the word cleanse or detox, run. I mean, and the first time somebody uses that, they've already lost credibility. So anything else they say after that is they could say something intelligent afterwards, but they've already solidified to me that they don't care about you. So like things like detox, cleanse, toxin removal, uh, chemicals in food, stay away from XYZ food because it's got chemicals in it. Um, buy my 21-day fix or buy my 12-week transformation. That's the stuff that the second you see that type of marketing, that's purely marketing and just stay away. As far as good information, I'll give you two books that every one of your audience members can read, and they'll have more knowledge about nutrition than anybody else on the planet. So there's a book called Burn by Herman Ponzer. It basically goes through the evolution of the human metabolism and talks about what the human metabolism actually is and how it functions. A couple of holes in his research, but it's pretty good overall. The better book to read for everybody on the planet is called The Hungry Brain by Stefan Guyenet. probably the best book you'll ever read to understand the psychology of eating. And if you read both of those books, you'll never believe anything on Instagram ever again.
Hey, sweet. Well, I'll be adding that to my list next. I guess in closing, a lot of this is more mental than it is actually reaching for the Sour Patch Kids and considering when and when not to drink your coffee. Those are my two main points. It's about your living situation, how you feel about yourself mentally. Gym is not your therapy. A therapist should be your therapy. And then the gym can be like your second therapy. But doesn't really gonna matter how we feel, or it's gonna matter how we feel on the inside. It's not gonna matter how we look on the outside if we feel like shit in our noggin.
Do you want the hierarchy? I can give you the hierarchy in 12 seconds.
Give it.
So, number one priority is understand where your calorie intake needs are. And the easiest way to do that, not the easiest, but the most direct way to do that is to weigh and measure your food for at least a month. Like put everything you eat on a scale outside of obviously restaurant meals, which you can't, but weigh and measure what you eat and use an app like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer or Macro Factor. There's a million and ones. Chronometer is my favorite one. It's what I use with my clients. I find it to be the most accurate. But do that for a month and track your trends of weight during that time. So let's say, for example, you start on June 1st, you finish on June 30th, and you notice that after the month, your weight doesn't move much. Average out whatever the calories were over that time, and that's probably what your maintenance is, plus or minus 100 on either side. So if you want to lose weight, chop 20% off that number and see how it goes. Like it's trial and error, but be honest, because a lot of people don't track their food honestly. Like weigh your food in grams, don't use measuring cups or volume, use actual weight in grams and understand how to read a nutrition label. So, like when you look at a nutrition label, there's total calories for the serving size allotted. That's the part that a lot of people miss. Like, make sure it's actually to that serving size. Look at total fat, look at total carbs. Don't worry about sugar. Don't worry about, I mean, obviously, fiber, you want to have some. And then look at total protein. So, the number that's the highest between those three is what that food is a source of. So if you're looking for
Okay.
a protein source, look for the protein to be the highest number. If you're looking for a fat source, look for fat to be the highest number. Carbs, same thing. Once you understand calories, then it's about, do I understand how much protein I need? Typically somewhere about zero 0.8, so 80%, or 100% of your desired body weight. So if you're 200 pounds and you want to be 150, eat about 150 grams of protein. So that's that number. And that's a set it and forget it. That doesn't need to change much. And then once you have that figured out, figure out a meal frequency for you that makes sense. So what I recommend for most people is 4 meals a day because that seems to align with their being awake cycle.
Hmm.
So rule of thumb is like don't go 5 hours or more without food because that's going to make you hungrier later in the day. Try to eat about every 3 to 4 hours. There's no magic to it. It's just more of a habitual thing. And just chop up those calories into 4 meals a day, make them relatively balanced. Or if you're somebody who doesn't like a big breakfast and prefers a bigger dinner, eat a lighter breakfast and eat a bigger dinner. Doesn't matter. From a weight training standpoint, 2 to 3 days a week, full body at a minimum, you nail all your major muscle groups. You can push, you can pull, you can squat, you can hinge, you can lunge. That's it. Variations of that. I mean, a Planet Fitness membership, and most Planet Fitnesses have that like circuit area.
Hmm.
If you hit every machine for 2 to 3 sets to near failure, failure just means I can't do another rep despite my form breaking down. That covers your base there at a very bare minimum. Get 8 to 10,000 steps a day. Drink half your body weight in ounces of water. Have a sleep time and a bedtime, or a sleep time and a morning time wake up that's relatively consistent. Like try not to go to bed after 11 and then wake up whenever you wake up. That's it. Like you do that shit and it's very hard to be unhealthy.
It seems simple, and, like, I could keep going and going and going, but then we're gonna be on a very different topic, but I feel like a lot of people don't wanna do the apps, they don't wanna use MyFitnessPal or
Right.
the one that you mentioned. They don't want to track their calories, like, any of my clients at the club, I literally say, "Just use MyFitnessPal," just for a week, just to see
Yeah.
what you're eating, just so we can figure out where you are at, and nobody ever wants to do it. And I love using the apps to track things, but maybe I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit more committed, and maybe that's a topic for another episode. But all those last little things, I think a lot of people don't want to do. And that's the problem. So then they go to the Instagram where they find the quick fix or the fads or the diets or the things that are not long term. And
Yeah,
it
I
should be
mean,
a long term lifestyle. Otherwise, you're not going to be committed and you're not going to get your results and you're not most likely not going to be healthy.
it's gonna bleed into your quality of life at some point. Like it starts off
Right.
as like a aesthetic issue, but then it turns into a quality of life mental health problem, which then can also manifest as an actual longevity problem.
Mhm.
And eventually it turns into a health concern. Obviously, like not every we have an obesity issue in America, but we really have more of an under muscle issue. Like more people, like yes, everybody's kind of fat, but most people are just weak and under muscle. That's really the thing that kills them first. It's not the fat that kills them. Like my mother's a perfect example. She's 79 years old and she almost can't stand by herself anymore because her legs can't support her weight.
Right.
But
Right.
if she squatted for the last 20 years, she'd be fine.
Right.
And they're like, oh, I might have knee pain. So my doctor tells me not to squat. Well, your doctor's not an orthopedic surgeon. And not doing something is the worst answer you can have. Train around pain.
Yeah.
I
You
mean,
got to do something about it.
something. Even just
Anything.
like walking is such a low hanging fruit that people don't do enough of. And
Hmm.
you're going to burn more calories on a daily basis from your non exercise activity than your exercise activity ever will. Like people grossly overestimate how many calories they burn and they grossly underestimate how many calories they eat. That's it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great place to stop because otherwise we're going to go for another hour and I'm sweating. I don't know about you, but I got a sweat mustache. My Sour Patch Kids are calling my name. So, and my dog is scratching at the door as
Uh,
promised. But I would love to thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all of your information. I actually feel like I learned a lot. And I'm glad that we had this chat because I was starting to really overthink a lot of the things that I was seeing. Even though I work in the fitness industry, it's very easy to get pulled into all of these crazy details that are floating around the 700 million apps. And again, just like I said with Stefania, just keeping things simpler, it's almost the best way to go about everything that we just talked about.
yeah. No, I appreciate it. If
Yeah.
anybody ever has any questions, if anybody from your audience wants to shoot me a DM on Instagram, I don't charge to get on phone calls. I don't have a consultation fee. If you want to, you can talk to me for an hour. I don't care. It's at 4 weeks to the beach. The number's 4 and the number 2.
Love it.
So anybody that needs me, shoot me a DM. I'm happy to chat with you.
Yeah. And anybody listening, we'll make sure we put that information in the description of the episode. Be tagging you on lots of Instagrams as this episode comes out so they'll know where to find you.
Thank you very much, Josh. I
Love it. Well,
appreciate it.
thank you
And
so much. I appreciate your time.
make sure to share your Sour Patch Kids.
With my dog. No, they're mine. I'm a greedy candy eater. All right. Thank you. And hopefully
Thanks,
we'll do
man.
this again.
Always here.